The breaking point. The skies above New Eden burned crimson as the Arcanian warfleet descended through the atmosphere. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the colony's Defense Command Center, watching tactical displays light up with incoming signatures. She'd fought the Arcanians for 15 years, learned their patterns, their strategies. This attack was different. Multiple capital ships breaking formation. Lieutenant Park reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. They're not deploying in attack patterns, Commander. Chen studied the erratic movements of the Arcanian vessels. Their typically precise formations were scattered, ships clustering together in defensive groups rather than the aggressive wing formation she'd come to expect. Years of combat experience told her something was very wrong. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies. The message that filled their comm systems wasn't the usual Arcanian battle cry. Instead, a deep voice spoke in broken human standard. Help, please help. They come. They consume. No time for old hatreds. Before Chen could respond, new signatures appeared at the system's edge. The void between stars seemed to ripple and tear, revealing shapes that defied description. Vast, writhing forms that absorbed both light and matter. Where they touched Arcanian ships, the vessels simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered to the cosmic wind. Orders, Commander. Park's voice cracked with barely contained fear. Chen took a deep breath. 15 years of combat instinct warring with what she was about to do. Open a channel to the Arcanian flagship and get me a direct line to Fleet Command. I think humanity just found itself some unlikely allies. The next hours passed in a blur of emergency protocols and hastily coordinated maneuvers. Chen watched as human defense platforms synchronized their fire with Arcanian energy weapons, creating overlapping fields of destruction that actually managed to slow the Void Tide's advance. It wasn't a victory, but it bought them precious time. Ancient enemies. The emergency council chamber aboard the orbital station, Haven, was thick with tension. Commander Chen sat across from War Master Catal, the Arcanian leader's iridescent scales reflecting the harsh lighting. Around them, representatives from both species watched with barely contained hostility. The Void Tide isn't just some natural phenomenon, Kittle said, his translator converting the clicking sounds of his native tongue into human standard. It's conscious, hungry, and it's been hunting our people across 12 systems. Chen leaned forward. Why come to us? We've been at war for over a decade. Because you fight differently. Catal's upper eyes fixed on Chen, while his lower pair scanned the room. We Arcanians are warriors of precision, of calculated strategy. But humans. He made a sound that the translator rendered as something between a laugh and a sigh. Humans are chaos incarnate. You adapt. You improvise. You do the impossible because no one told you it was impossible. Pretty words, General Santos interrupted from the far end of the table. But they don't erase the colonies your people burned. No, Catal agreed. Just as nothing erases the ships your minds destroyed, or the worlds your expansion threatened. He stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. But I watched your Commander Chen coordinate an evacuation with our forces without a moment's hesitation. I saw human civilians pulled to safety aboard Arcanian vessels, while your defense platforms protected our retreating ships. The Void Tide doesn't care about our past conflicts. It seeks only to consume. Chen studied the tactical displays showing the Void Tide's advance through nearby systems. What do you know about fighting it? Conventional weapons are useless. Energy weapons have limited effect. But we've observed something peculiar. When our different weapon systems interact, they create resonance patterns that seem to hurt it. Like what we saw during the evacuation, Chen mused. The overlapping fields. Precisely. But we need more than just compatible weapons. We need. Kittle seemed to struggle with the next words. We need your human creativity. Your ability to see solutions where we see only problems. A junior science officer, Dr. Emily Zhang, cleared her throat. Commander, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the evacuation. The resonance patterns the War Master mentioned. They're not just random interactions. There's a mathematical progression, like we're accidentally speaking an ancient language neither of us remembers. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Chen looked from the human representatives to the Arcanian delegation. Yesterday, she would have given her life to protect humanity from these aliens. Now, she realized, protecting humanity might mean trusting them. If we do this, she said carefully, we do it as equals. Full information sharing. Joint command structure. No hidden agendas. Kittle's scales shifted color slightly. A sign Chen had learned indicated deep emotion in his species. Agreed. Though you should know, there are those among my people who would rather face extinction than ally with humans. Just as I suspect there are humans who feel the same about us. Then we'll start with those who are willing, Chen replied, and prove to the others that we're stronger together than we ever were as enemies. The next few days were a crash course in cross-species cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside Arcanian weapons specialists, combining technologies that had until recently been used against each other. Dr. Zhang led a joint research team studying the void tide's reaction to different energy signatures, while Chen and Catal worked to create battle strategies that played to both species' strengths. But not everyone embraced the alliance. Chen broke up 3 fights between human and Arcanian crew members in the first week alone. The turning point came during a test of their combined weapons systems, when a containment field failed. Without hesitation, an Arcanian warrior named Tarek threw himself between the human technicians and the energy surge, his natural armor absorbing damage that would have killed the unprotected humans instantly. As Chen visited Tarek in the medical bay, she found him surrounded by the humans he'd saved, all of them attempting to learn the complex clicking sounds of his native language while he struggled to pronounce their names. It was a small moment, but it represented everything she hoped their alliance could become. Void tide signals detected in the outer system. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the comm. Multiple breach points forming. Chen shared a look with Catal across the command center. Time to see if our cooperation pays off. Indeed, the War Master replied, though I find myself more confident fighting alongside humans than I ever was fighting against them. The irony, Chen said with a grim smile, is that we had to face extinction to learn how to live together. As the alert klaxons began to sound, Chen watched human and Arcanian crews move in perfect synchronization, preparing for battle. They were no longer ancient enemies. They were simply soldiers standing together against the dark. The price of trust. Dr. Emily Zhang stared at her data screens in disbelief. She'd been analyzing the resonance patterns created by combined human-Arcanian weapons fire for weeks, but this was different. This was impossible. Commander Chen, she called out, her voice trembling. You need to see this. Now. Chen arrived at the research lab to find Zhang surrounded by holographic displays showing complex wave patterns. Catal was already there. His scales shifted to the deep blue of intense concentration. The weapon resonance patterns aren't random, Zhang explained. They're not even accidentally compatible. Look at this genetic analysis I ran on both species. The displays shifted to show twisting strands of DNA, one human, one Arcanian. At first glance, they appeared completely different, but as Zhang overlaid them, specific sequences began to align. That's not possible, Chen whispered. We were engineered, Catal said quietly. Both of our species, the weapons compatibility, the complementary tactical strengths, they're not coincidence. We were designed to fight together. Zhang nodded. The markers are clear. Someone, or something, modified both our species roughly 50,000 years ago. They gave humans our adaptability, our creative problem-solving. They gave Arcanians their natural armor, their tactical precision. We're two halves of the same weapon. Against the void tide, Chen realized. But why separate us? Why let us become enemies? Perhaps that was part of the design too, Catal suggested. Through conflict, both species evolved faster, developed better weapons, stronger defenses. Everything we created to use against each other now serves us in this greater war. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. How many people know about this? Just us for now, Zhang replied. But Commander, these findings could destroy everything we've built. Some will see it as proof we should work together. Others will say we're being manipulated. Chen finished. That this alliance is just playing into some ancient plan. They'll reject it purely out of spite. Kittle's scales rippled with concern. My people are proud, Commander. The suggestion that we were engineered, that our greatest strengths were given to us rather than earned, it could shatter morale. Yet keeping this secret feels like a betrayal of our agreement for full transparency. Before Chen could respond, the station's alert system activated. Multiple void tide breaches detected. All personnel to battle stations. Through the lab's viewport, Chen watched as reality itself seemed to tear open. The combined human Arcanian fleet moved to intercept, their weapons creating beautiful, deadly patterns in space. Look at them, she said softly. Working together, protecting each other. Would knowing the truth change that? Would it make Trek's sacrifice for those engineers mean any less? The trust we've built is real. Catal agreed. But it's fragile. One wrong word, one seed of doubt. Zhang spoke up. There's something else in the data. The genetic modifications, they're degrading. Have been for millennia. Whatever we were engineered to be, we're becoming something new. Something of our own making. Chen made her decision. Then that's what we tell them. Not that we were designed to work together, but that we're choosing to. That whatever started us on this path, what matters is what we do now. And the degrading modifications? Catal asked. Proof that we're writing our own destiny, Chen replied. Now we have a battle to win. Let's show the Void Tide what humans and Arcanians can do when they choose to stand together. As they rushed to their posts, Chen couldn't help but wonder, were they really making their own choices, or were they still playing out some ancient program? In the end, she realized, it didn't matter. What mattered were the bonds being forged in battle, the lives being saved by their cooperation, and the future they were fighting to protect. The station shuddered as the first wave of the Void Tide struck their defensive lines. In the command center, Chen watched human and Arcanian ships execute complex maneuvers in perfect harmony. Engineers from both species worked frantically to maintain the resonance fields that seemed to cause the entity such pain. Whatever they had been engineered to be, they were choosing what they would become. And for now, that choice was to stand together against the darkness that threatened them all. Darkness rising. The void between stars rippled like disturbed water as the Void Tide advanced. Commander Chen stood at the tactical station aboard the combined fleet's flagship, a hybrid vessel that merged human FTL technology with Arcanian weapon systems. Around her, human and Arcanian crew members worked their stations with practiced efficiency, though she could sense their fear. Primary breach expanding, Lieutenant Park reported. It's bigger than anything we've encountered before. Kittle moved to stand beside Chen, his armor gleaming under the emergency lights. They're learning, adapting to our weapons, just like we adapted to each other, Chen replied. She opened a channel to the fleet. All vessels, maintain resonance field integrity. Remember your training. We've practiced for this. The first wave of the Void Tide emerged from the breach. Vast, writhing shapes that defied description. Where before they had encountered tendrils and fragments, now they faced what appeared to be the entity's main body. Space itself seemed to warp around it, light bending and distorting in impossible ways. Echo Squadron, initiate attack pattern Delta, Chen ordered. Arcanian cruisers, prepare to synchronize weapons fire on my mark. She watched as human fighters darted through space in seemingly chaotic patterns, drawing the Void Tide's attention. The Arcanian ships moved with precision, their formation perfect despite the spatial distortions around them. When both groups opened fire simultaneously, their weapons created a web of energy that made the entity recoil. But something was wrong. The Void Tide's response wasn't what they'd expected. Instead of retreating from the resonance field, it pushed through, sacrificing parts of itself to reach their lines. It's not just adapting. Dr. Zhang's voice came over the comm. It's sacrificing its outer layer, the part that was vulnerable to our weapons. The core is different somehow. A massive tendril of void stuff lashed out, catching an Arcanian cruiser. Instead of disintegrating the ship instantly as they'd seen before, it began to pull it in, almost, studying it. "Break off," Kull shouted. "All vessels. Break formation." But it was too late. The Void Tide had learned from every previous encounter, every battle. It knew their patterns now, knew how to counter the very strategies they'd developed to fight it. 3 human destroyers vanished into its mass before they could react. "We need something new," Chen muttered. "Something it hasn't seen before." She turned to Catal. "You said humans were chaos incarnate. Time to prove it." She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Commander Chen. Forget everything we practiced. Every ship, every fighter. I want you to do the most insane, unpredictable thing you can think of. Now." Kill's scales flickered with surprise, but he nodded. "Arcanian vessels, support the humans. Match their chaos with precision." What followed was unlike anything either species had attempted before. Human ships performed maneuvers that bordered on suicidal, while Arcanian vessels provided synchronized support they improvised on the spot. A human pilot flew their fighter directly into an Arcanian ship's energy beam, using it to supercharge their own weapons. An Arcanian cruiser deliberately triggered its emergency core venting, using the plasma explosion to push a squad of human fighters into firing position. The Void Tide's movements became erratic, uncertain. It had learned to counter their coordinated strategies, but faced with pure improvisation, supported by precision, it couldn't adapt fast enough. "Multiple signatures detecting within the entity," John reported excitedly. "The chaos. It's creating interference patterns in its neural network." "Press the advantage," Chen ordered. "Everyone, keep being unpredictable." A human lieutenant rerouted power from life support to weapons, giving their guns 10 seconds of impossible power before they'd suffocate. An Arcanian gunner calculated a shot that used the gravity of 3 different ships to curve their energy beam in a spiral. Each crazy attempt seemed to inspire 2 more, human and Arcanian crews building off each other's innovations in real time. But victory came at a heavy cost. By the time the Void Tide finally retreated, nearly a third of their fleet was lost. The surviving ships were damaged, crews exhausted from pulling off maneuvers that should have been impossible. In the aftermath, Chen found Catal in the observation deck, watching repair drones swarm around their battered fleet. "I've never seen anything like it," he said quietly. "That level of controlled chaos. The way our crews work together without any real plan." "That's the thing about chaos," Chen replied. "It works best when it has a foundation to build from. We could only be that unpredictable because we trusted each other to be there, to support whatever crazy thing we tried next." But the cost. Catal's scales had shifted to the gray of morning. "So many lost. And more will be lost before this is over," Chen agreed. "But today proved something important. The Void Tide can learn our strategies, counter our technologies, but it can't predict what we'll become together." As if to emphasize her point, they watched a human repair crew working alongside Arcanian engineers, combining their technologies in ways neither species had imagined before the war. Every loss hurt. Every sacrifice weighed heavy. But with each battle, each shared victory and defeat, the lines between their species blurred a little more. The next attack would be worse. The Void Tide would learn from this defeat, come back stronger. But so would they. Together. The little things. 3 months after the battle that became known as the Chaos Gambit, the combined fleet gathered at the edge of human space. They had tracked the Void Tide to its entry point, a massive quantum fissure that twisted the fabric of reality itself. Every ship, human and Arcanian alike, carried modifications born from their shared experiences, their weapons tuned to frequencies they had discovered together. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship, now named Unity, studying tactical displays with Kittal. Dr. Zhang's latest findings were troubling. The fissure was growing exponentially. If we don't seal it now, Zhang explained, the void tide will be able to pour through in numbers we can't hope to fight. This is our only chance. The plan is sound, Kittal said, though his scales showed concern. But the resonance field required to collapse the fissure. Someone will have to maintain it from inside. Chen nodded grimly. A suicide mission. I volunteer. Kittal stepped forward, but Chen raised her hand. No, we both go. She turned to address the bridge crew. The void tide came here expecting to find two species fighting each other. Instead, they found us fighting together. Everything we've accomplished, every battle won, every life saved, came down to trust, to believing we could be more than our history. She activated the fleet-wide comm. This is Commander Chen. In a few moments, we'll begin our final assault on the void tide. Some of you may have heard rumors about our species' shared history, about ancient engineers who designed us to work together. Those rumors are true, but that's not why we're here today. We're here because we chose to be. Every human who trusted an Arcanian to watch their back, every Arcanian who put their faith in human ingenuity. Those weren't programmed responses. They were choices, little moments of trust that added up to something greater than ourselves. Kittal stepped forward. Today we make another choice, not because we were designed for it, but because it's right. Because together, we are stronger than any force that would tear us apart. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The fleet would create a massive resonance field, herding the void tide back toward the fissure. Unity, carrying a specially modified quantum core, would push through to the center of the field. The core's detonation, properly synchronized with the fleet's weapons, would seal the fissure permanently. As the battle began, Chen watched human and Arcanian ships move as one. There was no hesitation now, no uncertainty. Every crew knew their role, trusted their allies to play theirs. The void tide lashed out with desperate fury, but it couldn't break their lines. Field integrity at 90%. Park reported from his station. Void tide is retreating toward the fissure. All ships, maintain position, Chen ordered. Unity, prepare for final approach. As their ship pushed through the energy field toward the fissure, Chen felt Kittal's presence beside her. Any regrets? She asked. Only that it took us so long to find each other, he replied. Though perhaps we needed that time. Needed to learn to choose trust over fear. Warning klaxons blared as Unity's hull creaked under the strain. Through the viewports, reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Chen thought of all the little moments that had led them here. A shared canteen of water, a soldier sacrificing himself for former enemies, engineers learning each other's languages in a medical bay. Quantum core charging, John reported from engineering. Field synchronization in 30 seconds. Chen took a final look at the tactical display, at the hundreds of ships working in perfect harmony to give them this chance. Send one last message to the fleet, she ordered. Tell them it was an honor to choose this path with them. Core synchronization in 10 seconds. Zhang's voice was steady. 9, 8. Kittal's scales shifted to a color Chen had never seen before. Together, he asked, extending his hand in the human gesture they taught him. Chen took it, smiling. Together. Unity erupted in a blaze of quantum energy, human and Arcanian technology combining one final time. The resonance field collapsed inward, pushing the void tide back through the fissure. As reality rushed to seal itself, the combined fleet watched in awe as the darkness that had threatened both their species was finally banished. Years later, in the space where Unity made its final stand, a monument floats among the stars. It shows a human hand clasped with an Arcanian one and bears a simple inscription in both languages. Not because we had to, because we chose to. Around it, Ships of both species patrol together, their crews no longer divided by ancient hatreds or engineered purposes. They choose their own path now, guided not by programming, but by the simple truth that trust, freely given and earned through countless little moments, is the strongest force in the universe. The stars shine on, bearing witness to what humans and Arcanians built together, not a perfect piece, but something far more precious. The courage to choose it, again and again, one little moment at a time. The end.